Welcome to All About Japan. You want to learn all about Japan, and you've sent over a Wikipedia article to get us started.
Right.
But, it's interesting. We always hear about those, four main islands.
Yeah.
But did you know that Japan actually has over 14,000 islands?
Over 14,000.
It's pretty amazing.
It is.
It really shows how complex this place is geographically.
Absolutely.
14,000.
Yeah.
It's really hard to wrap your head around that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how did such a place even, come together,
Right.
Where do we even begin with a place this big and with such a complex history?
Well, let's think about Japan's history as not just a timeline of events,
Okay.
but as a story of incredible resilience and adaptation.
Resilience and adaptation.
Yeah, a story of a nation
Yeah.
repeatedly reinventing itself
Yeah.
in response to both external pressures and internal shifts.
Okay, I like that resilience and adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So where does the story of Japan begin?
Well, we could go all the way back to prehistory.
Well.
Around 38,000 BC,
Wow.
when modern humans first appeared on the archipelago.
Okay.
But to understand Japan's unique trajectory,
Right.
we should probably fast forward a bit to the Yayoi period.
Okay.
This is around the 4th century BC to the 3rd century AD.
Okay.
These folks migrated from the Korean peninsula,
Uh-huh.
and they brought with them some really revolutionary ideas,
Oh, like what?
like wet rice farming and metallurgy.
Okay.
These were practices heavily influenced by China and Korea.
So even from the very beginning, Japan was absorbing and adapting influences from other cultures.
Exactly.
It wasn't just isolated on those 14,000 islands.
You got it.
It was connected in some ways.
Mhm.
So interesting.
And this absorption and adaptation
Yeah.
is really a recurring theme throughout Japan's history.
Okay.
The Yayoi period really laid the groundwork for the development of a distinct Japanese culture and identity.
Okay.
And this all happened while the legendary emperor Jimmu,
Okay.
said to be a descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, is believed to have established the imperial line.
Wait, is that the same imperial line that exists in Japan today?
It is.
Wow, so that's how far it goes back.
According to legend, Emperor Jimmu ascended to the throne in 660 BC.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Now, of course, this date is shrouded in mythology,
Sure.
but it speaks volumes about the deep-rooted reverence for the emperor in Japanese culture.
So we've got these early settlers, the Yayoi people, adapting to the land.
Yeah.
The legendary Emperor Jimmu establishing a lineage that continues to this day.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the stage is set for something bigger.
It was.
What happened next?
In the 6th century AD, Japan experiences another wave of transformative influence.
Okay.
The arrival of Buddhism from the Korean kingdom of Baekje.
Uh-huh.
This wasn't just a religious shift.
Right.
It significantly impacted Japan's art, architecture, and even its governance.
I can see how Buddhism could have a major cultural impact.
Yeah.
Were there any political changes happening during this time?
There were.
What were they?
The Taika reforms, inspired by Chinese models of governance, aimed to centralize power under the imperial court.
So again, outside influence. It's
Yeah.
interesting how those things keep popping up.
It is fascinating.
So what did those reforms do?
They implemented a pretty radical restructuring of Japanese society.
Like what kind of things did they do?
The nationalization of land, a new tax system,
Wow.
and an administrative structure that was very similar to what was found in Tang Dynasty China.
Oh, wow.
This is a really pivotal moment because it lays the foundation for a more unified Japan.
It's amazing how these outside influences shaped the nation's development.
It really is.
You mentioned China a couple of times now.
Right.
How significant was China's influence on early Japan?
China's influence on early Japan was profound.
Wow.
You can see it in everything from Buddhism to writing systems to those administrative reforms we just talked about.
Right.
The Japanese were incredibly adept at taking what they learned from other cultures and adapting it to fit their own needs.
So it's not just a simple copying of foreign ideas.
Right.
It's a careful selection and adaptation to fit what they need.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this pattern continues as we move into the Nara period in 710 AD.
Okay, so what happens in the Nara period?
This era is marked by the establishment of a capital in Hajikish.
Okay.
That's modern-day Nara.
Okay.
And it's a time of artistic and cultural flourishing.
Uh-huh.
It's also when those iconic chronicles of Japanese history and mythology,
Yeah.
the Kochiki and the Nihon Shoki,
I've heard of those.
yeah, those were compiled.
So those go all the way back to the Nara period.
That's right.
It sounds like Japan is really coming into its own during this period.
It is.
What happens next?
Well, after Nara, comes the Heian period
Okay.
from 794 to 1185 AD.
Okay.
The capital shifts to Heian-ku,
Okay.
which is present-day Kyoto.
Okay.
And we see this just incredible blossoming of a distinctly indigenous Japanese culture.
Oh, wow.
This is the era of the Tale of Genji, often considered the world's first novel, a masterpiece of Japanese literature.
Yeah.
It's also the era when the lyrics for Japan's national anthem, Kimigayo, were penned.
Wow.
But it's not just about art and literature.
Right.
This is also where we see the emergence of a new class of warriors
Oh.
who will come to define a whole era in Japanese history.
Mm.
The samurai.
Now, this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
The samurai,
Uh-huh.
these warriors are almost mythical figures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone knows the samurai, even if they know nothing else about Japan.
Right.
Tell me more about them.
Well, to understand the rise of the samurai,
Okay.
we need to look at the Genpei War.
Okay.
This was a major conflict that ended in 1185
Okay.
with the victory of the Minamoto clan.
Okay.
Their leader, Minamoto no Yoritomo, establishes a military government in Kamakura,
Mm-hmm.
effectively shifting power away from the emperor and the court and ushering in Japan's feudal period.
So this is a pretty big turning point in Japanese history.
Absolutely.
A shift from courtly rule to military rule.
Precisely.
And you're saying that's going to shape Japan for centuries to come.
Yes. It will shape Japan for centuries to come.
Yeah.
The feudal system was complex,
Okay.
with the emperor as a figurehead,
Right.
and real power resting with the shogun,
Okay.
the military dictator,
Okay.
and, of course, the samurai who served the feudal lords, known as daimik.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But this period,
Yes.
with its emphasis on loyalty, honor, and martial prowess, it has captured the imagination of people worldwide.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these warriors from hundreds of years ago
Yeah.
still hold such sway over our collective imagination.
You do.
And I wonder what was life like for the average person during this time.
Yeah.
Did the rise of the samurai affect their daily lives?
Absolutely.
How so?
The samurai, with their strict code of conduct and their influence on every aspect of society,
Right.
had a profound impact on daily life.
I can imagine.
But to understand that impact, we need to delve deeper into the different shogunates that rose and fell during this era, each leaving its mark on Japanese society and culture.
Well, lead the way.
Okay.
I'm ready to dive deeper into this world of samurai and shogunates.
All right, then. Let's start with the Kamakura shogunate,
Okay.
established in 1185.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about this period is that the Kamakura shogunate successfully repelled 2 Mongol invasions.
Wow, Mongol invasions.
Yeah.
Like the Mongols.
Yeah,
Those were some of the most formidable warriors in history.
right.
How did the Japanese manage to defeat them?
It's a story of strategic brilliance,
Okay.
a bit of luck.
What do you mean?
Well, typhoons disrupted the Mongol fleets,
Oh, wow.
and just fierce determination on the part of the samurai.
So they got lucky.
Yeah, they got a little lucky.
And the samurai fought hard.
Exactly.
And they beat back the Mongols?
Twice.
That's amazing.
It's considered a pivotal moment in Japanese history.
I can see why.
It reinforced the samurai status as protectors of the nation.
Right.
And instilled a sense of national pride.
So nobody could conquer Japan.
Wow.
Did anybody ever pose a serious threat to the samurai's power during this feudal era?
Well, the Kamakura shogunate itself eventually crumbled due to the internal conflicts,
Okay.
giving rise to the Ashikaga shogunate in the 14th century.
Okay.
But the Ashikaga clan,
Yeah.
they struggled to maintain control
Over who?
over the increasingly powerful daimi,
Okay.
leading to a period of intense civil war
Oh, wow.
in the 15th century.
Okay.
It's called the Sengoku period.
The Sengoku period.
Yeah.
The Warring States period.
Yeah, the Warring States period.
It sounds pretty chaotic.
It was a time of upheaval and constant warfare,
Oh, wow.
with daimi vying for supremacy.
So everybody wants to be in charge.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
But it's also a period of incredible innovation in military strategy and technology.
So amidst all this chaos, you're saying they're coming up with new ideas.
New ways of fighting.
Wow, that's interesting.
And amidst this chaos, a remarkable figure emerges.
Oh.
Oda Nobunaga.
Oda Nobunaga.
Yeah.
Now that's a name I've heard before. Wasn't he a brilliant military leader?
He was.
I do.
Nobunaga was a strategic mastermind
Okay.
who utilized European firearms to conquer his rivals.
European firearms.
Yeah.
So again, we see these outside influences coming in.
Exactly.
Interesting.
He was ruthless,
Okay.
ambitious,
Okay.
and he almost succeeded in unifying Japan
Oh, wow.
before he was assassinated in 1582.
Assassinated.
Yeah,
So close yet so far.
exactly.
It makes you wonder what Japan would have looked like if he had been successful.
Yeah, what if...
What happened after his death?
Well, his successor,
Okay.
Toyotomi Hideyoshi,
Okay.
picked up where Nobunaga left off.
So he wanted to unify Japan too.
Yes,
And did he?
he did.
He did.
He unified Japan in 1590,
Wow.
and he even launched ambitious invasions of Korea.
Ambitious,
Yeah.
but not successful.
Well, not successful.
Oh, okay.
Hideyoshi's rule was a period of relative peace and stability after decades of warfare.
So it sounds like things calmed down a little bit under his rule.
For a while, yeah.
Okay, what else did he do?
He implemented important land surveys and sword hunts to consolidate his control and disarm the peasantry.
Sword hunts? What are sword hunts?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of scary.
Well, he was trying to take swords away from people.
I mean, trying to disarm the population after years of conflict makes sense.
Yeah,
It sounds like he wanted to prevent further violence.
it does.
So it sounds like he's doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, he was a pretty effective ruler.
But you're
Yeah.
saying he dies.
He does. In 1598,
Okay.
like Nobunaga,
Yeah.
his death left a power vacuum.
Okay.
His young son Hideyori was meant to be his heir,
Okay.
but a shrewd and ambitious figure named Tokugawa Ieyasu
Okay.
saw his chance.
Oh, so this Ieyasu guy, he takes over.
In a way, yes.
Oh.
After a decisive victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600,
Okay.
Ieyasu consolidated his power and became shogun in 1603.
So he's the one who establishes the Tokugawa shogunate,
That's
the
right.
one that lasts for over 250 years.
You got it.
Wow.
He moved the capital to Edo,
Okay.
present-day Tokyo,
Uh-huh.
and established a strict system of control over the daimyo.
This is the start of the Edo period.
Yes, this ushers in the Edo period.
An era of remarkable stability, economic growth,
Yeah.
and
And isolation?
isolation.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought Japan was interacting with Europeans
They were.
during Nobunaga's time.
Yes.
They even had firearms.
That's right.
What happened?
Well, you're right. There was contact with Europeans,
Okay.
particularly Portuguese traders and Jesuit missionaries
Okay.
in the 16th century.
Okay.
But the Tokugawa shogunate was wary of foreign influence.
They didn't like it.
They didn't like it.
Okay.
They saw it as a threat to their authority and the stability they had so carefully crafted.
So they wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah.
What did they do?
So they implemented the Sakoku policy.
Sakoku.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what's that?
It means closed country policy.
The closed country policy.
Yeah.
When did they do this?
In the 1630s.
Oh, okay, so they closed the country.
Yes.
For how long?
Over 2 centuries.
What?
Over 200 years.
That's incredible.
It's hard to imagine a country isolating itself so completely for so long in today's interconnected world.
It is.
Like, could you imagine no internet
I know, right?
or phones?
Crazy.
Yeah.
200 years of limited contact?
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect Japan's development?
What's a complex question?
Yeah.
On the one hand, Sakoku allowed the Tokugawa shogunate to maintain peace and stability.
Okay.
They successfully suppressed Christianity,
Oh, wow.
which they saw as a challenge to their authority.
Okay.
And it also fostered the development of a unique Japanese culture.
Like what?
Well, the Edo period saw a flourishing of art, literature, and traditional performing arts like kabuki theater.
So they really developed their own unique culture during this time. Exactly.
Interesting.
But there's a downside.
there's always a downside.
Right.
It also left Japan technologically and strategically vulnerable.
Vulnerable. How so?
Well, while Europe and other parts of the world were undergoing rapid technological advancements,
Like what?
particularly in areas like shipbuilding and weaponry,
Okay.
Japan remained largely cut off from these developments.
So they fell behind.
In a way, yeah.
And you're saying this would have significant consequences later on.
Yes, when Japan was finally forced to open its doors to the West.
Forced.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Did someone come knocking?
They did.
Mm.
And it wasn't a gentle knock.
No.
It was the arrival of Commodore Matthew Perry and his black ships in 1853.
Okay, Commodore Perry Black Ships. I need you to tell me more.
All right, so picture this.
Okay.
Edo Bay, 1853,
Okay.
a fleet of American warships,
Okay.
painted black,
Okay.
armed with powerful cannons,
Oh, wow.
sails into the harbor.
Did you show up?
They show up.
What?
Their mission to force Japan to open its ports for trade with the United States.
It was a shock to the system after centuries of isolation.
A huge shock.
I can only imagine what was Japan's reaction.
Initially, there was resistance.
Okay.
The shogunate was in a difficult position.
Yeah.
They were ill-equipped to resist the American naval power.
Right, because they hadn't been developing their technology.
Exactly.
So they couldn't fight back.
Not really.
But they didn't want to open up.
They didn't.
Because of the Sakoku.
Yeah, the closed country policy.
So what did they do?
Well, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
Japan's isolation was coming to an end.
Right.
And a new era was about to begin.
So this is where Japan's story takes another dramatic turn.
Another one.
A shift from isolation to...
What?
To what? What happens next?
What happens next is a period of rapid and dramatic transformation.
Oh.
The arrival of Perry's black ships exposed the weaknesses of the Tokugawa shogunate.
Okay.
And ultimately led to its collapse.
Oh.
In 1868, the emperor was restored to power.
Yeah.
In what's known as the Meiji Restoration.
The Meiji Restoration. I've heard about that, but I don't really understand its significance.
Okay.
What made it so transformative?
What's remarkable about the Meiji Restoration is the sheer speed and scale of the changes that took place.
Like what?
Japan was determined to catch up with the West.
Okay.
And avoid becoming a colony.
Right.
So they embarked on a path of rapid modernization.
Modernization.
Yeah.
So what did they do?
They embraced Western ideas and technology.
Okay.
While also preserving their cultural core.
So they're trying to blend the two?
Yeah.
Wow.
They sent students abroad to study Western science, technology, and political systems.
Okay.
They built railroads.
Wow.
They established a modern banking system.
Wow.
And they created a conscript army based on the Prussian model.
So they're making huge changes in every part of their society.
Yeah, basically overnight.
It's incredible how they managed to transform themselves from a feudal society to an industrial powerhouse in just a few decades.
It's really remarkable.
But you're saying there are complications.
Well, rapid modernization also laid the groundwork for Japan's growing militarism and expansionist ambitions in the 20th century.
Ah, right. Japan's involvement in World War II.
Exactly.
It's a dark chapter in the country's history.
It is.
But how did Japan go from embracing modernization to engaging in such a devastating conflict?
Well, we need to look at the complex interplay of internal political shifts, economic pressures, and the rise of nationalism on the world stage.
So it's a complicated story.
It is.
And it's one that we need to understand.
Yeah.
So lead the way.
Okay.
I'm ready to delve into this complex and often challenging period of Japan's history.
All right, let's start by looking at the aftermath of the Meiji Restoration and the reign of Emperor Meiji's successor, Emperor Taisho.
Okay.
The Taisho era from 1912 to 1926 saw the emergence of what's known as the Taisho democracy.
Taisho democracy.
Yeah.
So move towards democracy.
Yes.
Interesting. After all that we've discussed about emperors and shoguns,
Right.
this seems like a pretty significant shift.
It was a period of growing political liberalization and social reform.
So they're really trying to change things up,
They are.
but it doesn't last.
This period of democratization was relatively short-lived.
Why? What happened?
Well, World War I, while devastating for much of Europe, actually allowed Japan, as an ally of the victorious side, to expand its influence in Asia and the Pacific.
So they benefited from the war?
In a way, yes. They captured German possessions in the region,
Oh, wow.
which further fueled their imperial ambitions.
It seems like even a move toward democracy couldn't completely erase those expansionist desires.
Unfortunately, that's right.
So what happened next?
As we move into the 1930s, the global landscape becomes increasingly unstable.
Okay.
The Great Depression had a ripple effect across the world, and Japan was no exception.
So everybody's hurting.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Economic hardship contributed to the rise of nationalism and militarism.
Ah, so people are looking for someone to blame.
Yeah, and they're looking for strong leaders.
Right.
Radical nationalist groups gained influence,
Okay.
pushing for expansion in Asia and rejecting liberal democracy.
So the seeds of World War II are being sown during this time of global turmoil.
Exactly.
What happens in Japan?
In 1931, Japan invades Manchuria,
Manchuria.
establishing the puppet state of Manchukuo.
A puppet state.
Yeah, they're controlling it.
Yeah.
This move is condemned by the League of Nations,
Okay.
and Japan withdraws from the organization in 1933.
So they're becoming more and more isolated.
Yeah, they're going their own way.
And
By 1940, they've allied themselves with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, forming the Axis powers.
wow. It's hard to believe how quickly things escalated from a brief period of democratization to aligning with some of the most brutal regimes in history.
It's a pretty dramatic shift.
What led Japan down this path?
Well, remember, Japan had been modernizing rapidly, but they were also resource poor.
What do you mean?
They lacked many of the raw materials needed to fuel their growing industrial economy and military.
So they needed stuff.
They did.
Oil.
Oil, steel, rubber, things like that.
And they didn't have enough?
Not enough, no.
Okay.
Their expansionist policies were driven in part by this need for resources.
So they felt like they had to take it from other countries.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And there was this growing sense of national exceptionalism.
What does that mean?
Some believed that Japan was destined to rule Asia,
Oh, wow.
that they had a cultural and racial superiority over other Asian nations.
It's a dangerous and misguided ideology,
It is.
and one that ultimately led to devastating consequences.
You're right. The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941
Right.
brought the United States into the war.
And that changed everything.
It escalated the conflict dramatically.
Yeah.
What followed were years of brutal fighting across the Pacific,
Right.
resulting in millions of deaths.
It's hard to even think about.
And of course, the war culminated in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945.
It's difficult to even comprehend the scale of the destruction and suffering during World War II.
It was a truly horrific war.
So how did Japan recover from such a devastating conflict?
Well, after its surrender, Japan was occupied by Allied forces led by the United States.
Right.
This occupation, while challenging, actually played a key role in Japan's post-war recovery.
So the U.S. helped them rebuild,
They did.
even after everything that happened.
Yes, it's quite remarkable.
What happened during the occupation?
They adopted a new pacifist constitution,
Pacifist.
renouncing war and emphasizing democratic principles.
Wow, so they completely changed their approach to government and war.
They did.
Okay.
They received aid from the United States
Uh-huh.
and benefited from the global economic boom of the post-war era.
So the United States, the very nation that Japan had attacked at Pearl Harbor, played a critical role in their rebuilding.
It's an incredible turn of events.
So Japan rebuilds.
They do. And Japan, with its characteristic resilience and adaptability, embraced these changes and emerged as a global economic powerhouse, a leader in technology and innovation.
It's an incredible story of recovery and transformation.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from ancient origins and imperial ambitions to devastating war and remarkable rebirth.
We have.
But what about modern-day Japan? What are some of the challenges and opportunities facing the country today?
One of the most pressing issues is Japan's rapidly aging population and declining birth rate.
I've read about that.
It's a demographic challenge that has significant social and economic implications.
So there aren't enough young people.
Exactly. With fewer young people entering the workforce and a growing elderly population, Japan's social security system is under immense strain.
And that affects everything.
It does. It raises questions about how they'll maintain their economic competitiveness and care for their aging citizens.
So what are some of the potential solutions?
Well, some experts suggest increased immigration as a way to address the labor shortage.
Okay, more workers.
Yeah. But Japan has historically been a very homogeneous society.
Right.
So large-scale immigration presents cultural and societal challenges.
Yeah, people might not be comfortable with that.
Exactly. There are also efforts to boost the birth rate through government incentives,
Okay.
but those haven't had a significant impact so far.
So it's a tough problem.
It's a complex problem with no easy answers.
It makes you wonder what the future holds for Japan.
It does.
They've overcome so many challenges throughout their history, but this one seems particularly daunting.
It is a big one.
But
I am hopeful. Japan has proven time and time again that they are a nation of innovators and problem solvers.
so you think they'll find a way?
I do. They are at the forefront of robotics and automation, which could help mitigate the effects of a shrinking workforce.
Robots.
Robots.
Okay.
And they have a strong cultural emphasis on respect for elders and community,
Right.
which might offer solutions as they navigate this demographic shift.
It's inspiring to think about how Japan might leverage its unique strengths to address this challenge. It's been an incredible journey exploring Japan's complex and fascinating history, its cultural richness, and the challenges and opportunities it faces today. Thank you for guiding me through this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. Japan is a country that defies easy categorization.
Yeah.
It's a place where ancient traditions coexist with cutting-edge technology, where resilience and adaptability are woven into the fabric of their society.
And for you listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a deeper understanding of Japan, a country that has constantly reinvented itself throughout its long history, as we've seen. Japan's story is not just a tale of emperors and samurai, of isolation and modernization. It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt, overcome, and create in the face of extraordinary challenges. And as Japan grapples with its aging population and a rapidly changing world, one can only wonder what remarkable transformations lie ahead for this dynamic and enigmatic nation.